Today we're looking at a study on psychedelics, rituals, and transcendence, and it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a really good one. And basically what we're going to see is that new research shows that, hey, dancing on psychedelics at a rave can actually induce the same sort of experience that those who subscribe to a mainstream religion are aiming for. And we're going to look at a study and research that shows this, which is very interesting. And I mean, I know those who have done this probably, this is old hat, they understand this. But one of the main things that we're going to be talking about today is how this idea of ritual transcendence through, possibly even the use of psychedelics and things of this nature, is that we can go above and beyond the religious experience. Because religion in general does the opposite of what we should be striving for. What does religion do? Religion divides us and it separates us from God. Because what does it do? Mainstream religion tells us that God is external to us, that we need to worship this God, and then it divides us by making you opposed to everyone else who does not believe in the God that you worship. So it strips you of divinity, puts God somewhere else, and it divides the world. Whereas if we step away from this, typical mainstream religious stance and instead embrace the idea of a ritual transcendence, we can, through these practices, make a connection with ourselves being divine and create a world of interconnectedness and unity as we have these experiences that show us the interconnectedness of reality. We're going to be talking about a lot of this today. Now, one thing right off the bat that I want to say, there are some misconceptions. First of all, I want to say a disclaimer, don't do anything illegal, don't do anything dangerous. Now, I also want to emphasize that when I talk about psychedelics, a lot of people get the wrong impression. Some people think that I'm trying to say that psychedelics are the answer to everything, or that psychedelics are going to change the world. And that all we have to do is, do some and then everything will be fine. That's not what I'm saying at all. If you watch my videos, I'm very much against that. Psychedelics in and of themselves is not the answer. However, guess what? There's many different ways of experiencing life, and psychedelics can be helpful in a certain way if we use them in a positive way to achieve these states where we can have a deep and meaningful connection with existence, reality, and each other. So we're going to be getting into that a lot of detail. It's really great. And also because it's almost shadow season, we did just recently talk about the Dionysian mysteries. And we're going to see the Dionysian mystery cult is really a throwback to all this because that's what they would do. They would do these rituals that involved, dance and music and intoxicants and wine and sex and all these different things. But they did it for the purpose of transcendence, in which they would identify themselves with the god Dionysus. Again, you have this self-deification rather than, worshiping the external god and causing division and strife and all the nonsense that we get from a typical mainstream religion. So here we have an article called Ritual Transcendence and Psychedelics. So shamanic practices have long involved music and dancing while on mind-altering substances. A new study seems to suggest that the contemporary secular version of that is taking psychedelic drugs while dancing at a rave, can induce similar experiences as those that religious rituals aim for. Social bonding and the feeling of belonging to something greater. And while personality traits like openness seem to play a role in how likely the people were to have a lasting transformative experience, the ritualistic context was key in helping participants overcome pre-existing meaning systems and gaining new perspectives. So this is a very interesting idea, talking about how these psychedelic induced experiences, particularly in areas that involve ritual and dance and music, can result in social bonding as well as overcoming pre-existing meaning systems, as in getting past any sort of religious or belief system that you're indoctrinated into, getting past that to experience something greater and gaining a new perspective. So, new research published in Frontiers in Psychology has demonstrated that engaging in dancing, listening to musical beats, being sleep deprived, and taking psychedelic drugs during raves bonds people together in a way that still shows effects up to 5 years after the event. And this is really interesting. Now, right off the bat, I want to say I have experiences here with all these different things. Sleep deprivation is not necessary. All right? You don't need to be sleep deprived. So remember, don't do anything illegal and don't do anything dangerous, okay? You don't need to be sleep deprived. You don't need to push yourself to fatigue or anything like this. And also, I want to remind you that, again, you don't have to do psychedelics to understand the true nature of reality, okay? It's not a cure-all. It's not a fix-all. It doesn't tell you the true nature of reality, but they are tools, and that's what we're exploring today. And this research is showing, again, engaging in dancing, listening to musical beats, taking psychedelics during raves has this effect, this lasting effect up to 5 years later. And this is extremely similar to what we talked about in last stream about the Dionysian mystery cults. The Dionysian mystery cults were these groups in ancient Greece that would get together and engage in exactly this. They would engage in dancing. They would engage in music. They would engage in intoxicants. They would engage in wine. They would engage in sex. They would engage in all these things at once. But here's the really important part about it, is that it all had a purpose. And this purpose was to sort of activate the God within, where when they were at the peak of their experience, because think about it, all these different experiences are happening all at once and blending together. You have the beat of the drum, you have the music, you have the psychedelics, you have the physical, even orgasm. You have all these different things happening at once. This very, you can imagine the drums, this very hypnotic, ritualistic experience. And then at the peak of this experience, what they would do is they would identify themselves with the god Dionysus. Self-deification. So it was this self-identity with the god and these ritual aspects of it that really gave way to these transcendent experiences. And the reason why I want to talk about this today is because when we build a new Hyperion world, what we want to do is we want to bring meaning back into the world. So you have these things like, raves and all that. That's fine. That's awesome. And they can be a lot of fun. But imagine that we had these elements such as dance, music, lighting, social gatherings, intoxicants, all these things. Imagine that we have these things, but also deep meaning, deep ritual, deep purpose behind them so for example, these things, when the purpose of these events aren't really to be ritualistic or social bonding or to gain a higher understanding of or experiencing of interconnectedness. That's not the point of these, but it happens. So imagine how much more powerful it would be if we combined all these elements, but also injected it with the meaning and the purpose of striving for experiencing interconnectedness, experiencing bonding, experiencing the absolute. It would be that much more purposeful and impactful, because it would sort of be like the Dionysian mysteries, but if the Dionysian mysteries were just done to purely have fun, there was no ritual in them, they didn't self-identify with the god or anything like that. Yeah, they'd still be great, but it would be missing that transcendent experience. So do you see the topic is psychedelics, ritual, and transcendence, because when you combine these things together, you get this higher experience. When you combine meaning with these different elements, purpose with these different elements, that is when. So again, psychedelics can be very, very powerful tools. And when they're treated as such and used in such a way where one is doing them with meaning and purpose to create a interconnected community, to experience the interconnectedness of the universe, it can be a very powerful thing. Like I said, I had a friend who will remain nameless, but I have a friend who did salvia. And when my friend did salvia, they had the experience of seeing all of reality being reduced to waveforms and frequencies. And this experience of seeing reality being reduced to waveforms and frequencies is really what spurred them to start looking into Hyperionism, because in Hyperionism, reality is made of waves and frequencies, mathematical waves, mathematical frequencies. So you can see they can have a big, impactful impact on people. Now, personally, just so you know, I've never had a great experience on salvia. I don't recommend it, but I'm just using that as an illustration. Now, so a particular interesting aspect of these findings was that engaging in the 4Ds, dancing, drums, sleep deprivation, and drugs, again, I do not recommend sleep deprivation, okay? But anyway, only led to personal transformation and associated social bonding when the rave context induced awe. So awe is a complex emotion that involves self-transcendence, which happens when a focus on the self or boundaries of the self diminish to such an extent that one starts to feel connected to something bigger than oneself. Whether the group of ravers group is dancing with nature. Oh, whether the group of ravers one is dancing with, nature, the universe, or God. These are the things that you could feel connected to, the things that you can feel something bigger than oneself. That is the group that you're dancing with, or nature, or the universe, or God. So you see how these can be very powerful tools in having the experience of an interconnected community and creating social bonds and a collective experience, right? And that's the whole point, is that in Hyperionism, we want to create a powerful interconnected collective. Now, psychedelics aren't going to magically make it happen, but they can be a powerful tool for some people, right? That's always my point, and I really want to make that clear because I can't tell you how sick I am of people going in the comments saying, well, psychedelics aren't going to just change everything. Yes, I know that. I am against that. Psychedelics aren't going to just magically make everything better and change something. But they're a tool. Just like going to talk to a psychologist is a tool for transformation. Just like, you can think of so many different activities that aren't just going to instantly necessarily make your life better, but can be a God damn. Excuse me. Anyway, you can think of many different things where it's not just going to instantly make your life better, but it can be a powerful tool for those who it is beneficial for. And again, some people, it might not be beneficial for them at all. Don't ever feel like you need to do these things are not necessary. But anyway, let's continue. So it was measured by feelings of connectedness, self-diminishment, perceived vastness, altered time perception, physical sensations, and a need to make sense of the experience. Experiencing these states as a result of the 4Ds led to personal transformation and social bonding. Now, here's another thing that I want to say is really important when it comes to psychedelics being a powerful tool. For some people that use them, here's the important part here. And it's listing all the different things that can happen. A feeling of connectedness, self-diminishment, perceived vastness, altered time perception, physical sensations, and a need to make sense of the experience. Now, I also want to say real quick as a caveat, in Hyperionism, we are not trying to get rid of or dissolve or destroy the self. As much as we are about the collective, we are also about the self. We're about both, all right? That's really important. We're not one of these new age groups that think that, oh, we need to just destroy the self and exist in this mass, this sort of emulsive blob of oneness. No, we are individuals in an interconnected system. So here's the difference. These sort of Eastern mystical beliefs and New Age beliefs, it's almost like reality is this energy soup, and you dissolve into it. And that one energy is, that one ocean of energy is this true reality that we all sort of dissolve into. That's not the case in Hyperionism. We are both an individual and a collective at the same time. And a great way to understand this is through the concept of a neural network. Neural network is a system used in machine learning and AI, and it's a great example of how Hyperionism perceives and understands individuality in addition to existing as one collective. So there is one network, but that one network is made up of many nodes, or neurons in the words of neural networks. So you see, you have this system, but the system is made up of a collection of individuals working together as one system. So you have the network, which is one system, and then you have the individual nodes of that one system. And that network is dependent on the nodes for its existence. If you remove the nodes, that network wouldn't exist anymore. So it's very important to understand the difference in Hyperionism. A lot of people come to Hyperionism and they bring their preconceived notions to it, and they think we're something that we're not. We're not about disintegrating and dissolving the self totally and completely. We're about the ability to see past the self. So you see, if you are a node in the neural network, you can see past your nodal mode and enter into network mode. So do you see, in Hyperionism, we have the avatar perspective, the monadic perspective, and the absolute perspective. All three of these are critical for achieving in Hyperionism what we call hyper-awareness. Now, the avatar and absolute mode are very much like nodal mode and network mode. In nodal mode, you know that you are an individual mind, an individual node. In network mode, you realize that you and the rest of the nodes are the one network. That's what you are. Together, you are that. And that's what I mean by saying that we are God as well. It would take me a long time to explain all of it. I've done it in a lot of videos, but just this is how we are both one and many at the same time. We are the network, we are the nodes, we are the avatars. We have network consciousness, we have nodal consciousness, and we also have avatar consciousness. Now, so I digressed a lot, but one of the things that I wanted to point out here, right? They're pointing out the different benefits of it, feelings of connectedness, self-diminishment, altered time perception. So so I'm listing all the different positive things here. One of the positive things is that it can induce a feeling of interconnectedness, which is excellent if we want to build a connected world, a connected reality. And it can, have a sense of perceived vastness. It can start to help people form that analog all, that structure of understanding all reality and identifying with it. That's what an analog all is. An analog I is your sense of self-awareness. You create an imaginary version of yourself and you identify with it. An analog all is creating this model of reality, of allness, of all reality, and identifying with it. And this is ultimately what leads to being able to attain the absolute perspective, absolute consciousness. So, I keep digressing and not getting to my main point here. The main point is that one of them is that the need to make sense of the experience. One of the byproducts that people have of taking psychedelics is they have this experience and then they need to make sense of the experience. Why is that important? Because for some people, this can kick off the quest to understand themselves, to understand reality, and to understand where they are, what they are, and why they are here. So, and I know this because personally, this is an effect that they had on me. I went through many, many, many different dialectical stages. I went from Christianity to materialist agnosticism, to dualism, to finally idealist rationalism. But psychedelics played a very large part in enabling me to step away from the belief that reality was simply material. Now, again, I was agnostic, so I didn't 100% believe in that, but I was leaning towards it. But what psychedelics allowed me to do was to perceive the interconnectedness of reality, to perceive the vast power of mind that greatly outstrips what science says is possible, mainstream science. And so this led me on a quest to understand. And this is why I really want to stress that psychedelics are tools, not answers unto themselves. Did psychedelics give me an answer? No. They started my process of asking questions. Now, I always ask questions. That's why I left Christianity. That's why I did all the different things that I did. But at a particular point, psychedelics started me asking questions in a certain direction that was necessary for me to finally continue a progressive dialectical growth, which finally reached a culmination. So my point is that in some people, psychedelics can be a powerful tool to kickstart this chain of questioning. Now, now you see they're not an answer to themselves. And a lot of people won't have that experience, and they'll just do that, and they'll just go like, wow, that was trippy, dude. And then so for these people, of course, it's not beneficial in that sense. Now, you'll have other people who, instead of questioning and searching for answers, they start to treat it almost more like a religion. Like, oh, wow, psychedelics, they're the answer to everything. We need to just, devote ourselves to talking to DMT entities. No, that's also stupid. So I'm not saying that there is not a danger in them. There is a danger in them, in that, like anything else that's not grounded in reason, you can start to believe in crazy concepts, just like the occult or any of these, or mainstream religion or any of these other systems. Any system, if you're not grounded, I don't care what it is, if you're not grounded in logic and reason, any system, any experience, etc., can lead you down a crazy path. Even empiricism, which is mainstream materialist science, if you're not grounded in logic and reason, through empiricism, you'll start to believe crazy ideas like the world is only matter and that's it. That is a completely irrational and logical idea, being that our knowledge of ourselves as minds. I won't get into all that there now, but you get what I'm saying, okay? And the reason why I stress this so much is because this topic brings up so many misconceptions. It's almost as fraught with misunderstanding as when I talk about God. So I just want to really emphasize, I'm a big proponent of psychedelics for the right person, done the right way and not taken as answers in themselves. They're very powerful tools. They're not for everyone. Don't feel pressured that you need to do them. You don't. They are not necessary, but there are benefits. Remember, don't do anything dangerous or illegal. Anyway, let's continue, or else I'll never get through this. So analysis demonstrated that the awe-inspiring ritual context of the rave, and you see, raves don't even have a ritual context. So you see my point is that how powerful they are, even in a rave setting. Imagine how powerful they would be if they were done in an actual ritualistic way, with the goal of interconnectivity, with the goal of establishing connection, with the goal of gaining intuitive insight. Analysis demonstrated that the awe-inspiring ritual context of the rave that led to personal transformation and bonding was driven in particular by the amount of dancing and drugs the ravers had done. Importantly, they help alter our states of consciousness, They help alter our states of consciousness to an extent that we can transcend our normal boundaries of self and feel to become part of something bigger, like a group. But this transcendence also allows us to step away from the everyday and the mundane into the surreal and the sacred. And again, this is exactly what the Dionysian mysteries were about. You had this Greek political and social life that had all these different hierarchies. It was very patriarchal. The Dionysian mysteries was a time to step away from the mundane, step away from the everyday life. And everyone, this gave release for people who were even treated not so well, like women and foreigners and slaves. But in the Dionysian mysteries, they were able to step away from that that damaging hierarchy. And so we can see that we have some of that today. But my point is how much better we can make it when it is actually done for a purpose, not almost just accidentally stumbled upon. That's kind of what's happening here. It's just sort of accidentally being stumbled upon. Like someone goes to a rave and they're dancing and they do some drugs or something and they sort of accidentally stumble upon this. Imagine if we did it in a designed way, in a conscious way, for the purpose of maximizing this effect. And that's what the Dionysian mysteries were about. And that's why it was very important, the culmination, the peak is when they had self-deification, identification of themselves with the God within, right? The God within, that they were the embodiment of God. Now, and again, this is why these, ritual partying, that's what the Dionysian mysteries were, ritual partying. Everything that we have today, raves, are a direct result of the Dionysian mysteries. The Dionysian mysteries kicked off theater, art, concerts, plays, all these different group activities blended together with, dance, music, art, all that. They have their roots in the Dionysian mysteries. So you see what we're talking about here, as in raves and whatnot, this is a result of the Dionysian mysteries in ancient Greece. But we need to bring back the purpose and the transcendence and the meaning, which is what the Dionysians knew were so important. It was you had to be initiated into it. It was this very transcendent experience, in addition to being this ritual party, which it really was. And if you realize how much better this is than mainstream religion, you'll see that this can be absolutely replaced by mainstream religious experience. Because what does mainstream religion do? It divides and places God outside of you. The exact opposite of what these ritual transcendent experiences do. What do the ritual transcendent experiences do? They bring a sense of if they're done right, of course, a lot of caveats here, but if they're done correctly, etc., they bring a sense of interconnectedness, and for many people, an understanding that they are God, especially if we do it in the right context. So it is, again, like the Dionysian mysteries, self-deification. God is you. You identify with God. You are God. And the interconnectedness of reality and the community. Religion, it does the opposite. You might have a religious experience, but the opposite is done, in that God is outside of you. It is an external being to worship. You are not being self-deified. Your deification is negated and projected and externalized. It is ripped away from you. Also, a religious experience may bring a group together, but only that particular religious group, in that now they are opposed to all other religious groups, hence ultimately brings world division. It might bring unification for that particular group, but ultimately world division. Now in Hyperionism, we want to have a unification. And we can't have systems that are intentionally dividing, because that leads to net division. So what we want to do is set up a system in which we're all grounded in one very important idea, guided by logic and reason, that we are gods/God on a path to divinity and apotheosis, all guided by logic and reason. And these ritual transcendent experiences can be very elevating experiences to take part in, that contributes to that, rather than a religious experience which rips your divinity away and ultimately divides the world. So this transcendent also allows us to step away from the everyday and the mundane into the surreal and the sacred, just like the Dionysian mysteries. Such experience challenges pre-existing meaning systems. And I know that that's possible firsthand. They can dissolve your opinion structures. They can dissolve your conception of what you thought was true and open you up to new ideas and expand your boundaries. Is that true for everyone? No. For some people, it starts a chain of questioning. For others, they just go, wow, that was trippy, dude. So again, remember, I'm not saying it's a cure-all or an answer in itself. For some people, it's a very powerful tool. Such experiences challenge pre-existing meaning systems and inspire people to new perspectives and ways of thinking. Thus, awe is not only an emotion associated with wonder, but also a meaning-making emotion that allows us to accommodate the perception of something, perceptually or psychologically, vaster than oneself. As such, it is an essential part of both for social bonding, feeling connected with a group larger than oneself, and personal transformation, incorporating new perspectives and insights. And do you see, these two aspects are huge elements of Hyperionism. Connectedness with a group larger than oneself, and personal transformation, incorporating new perspectives and insights. And do you see how that is about the individual and the collective? Personal growth and connectedness with the collective. So do you see how they can accommodate in an experiential way the goals of Hyperionism? Again, they're not answers in themselves. They're not. And the reason why I say that is because I don't want people coming to Hyperionism and being like, oh man, I'm just going to trip and that's it. It becomes a crutch. It becomes lazy. We don't want that. If you are truly intent on understanding the truth about reality, if you're truly intent on personal transformation, if you're truly intent on reaching higher levels of awareness, if you're really intent on all these things, dropping some acid is not going to do it in and of itself. And humanity loves the easy way out, loves the path of least resistance. So that's why I'm emphasizing it so much, because I know humans, and they love it when you bring in something that's really easy to do, and then they'll just become obsessed with it and do nothing else. All right, so be careful. Don't do that. Don't use it as a crutch. It's not a crutch. It's a tool. You see, something that's a tool can easily become a crutch if you're not careful. So, but anyway, as you can see, an essential part of social bonding, feeling connected with that which is larger than oneself, and personal transformation, incorporating new perspectives and insights. So it is a powerful method of experiencing the elements that Hyperionism is logically pushing towards. Because we need to have both. We need to have the rational aspects, and then we need to have the experience as well. Rational is way more important. Rational is what leads and guides. But meaning, purpose, experience is very important for living a fulfilled life. Okay, and this is an important part, but what if one engages in this without experiencing any awe or self-transcendence? I'm going to go over this real quick because there's still more I want to read, and I'm spending a lot of time on this. But basically what this part says is that openness is very important to the experience. If you are not open, you are probably it's more likely that you are not going to have some sort of transcendent or awe-inspiring or self-transformative experience, right? So that's what's also very, very important, is if you want these tools to work in the way that they're supposed to, you must be open. You must be open to challenging ideas and opinions and thoughts. You just need to be open in general. If you're not, it's most likely not going to have a positive effect. And again, this is why it's not for everything, and it's not a cure-all. Some people think I did a video on should Trump, what if Trump did DMT? Because some people are really silly. They think, oh, well, if Trump just did DMT, he'd suddenly become a compassionate, loving individual who knows the interconnectedness of reality. No. People do that. People are like, oh, well, all these people who are closed-minded and whatnot, all we need to do is have them do psychedelics. No, you need to it's for a very particular type of person that is open and intent on really understanding truth. So for some people, it's just a waste of time. Psychedelics in and of themselves aren't going to change the world, but they're powerful tools for those who can use it properly. Anyway, I'm going to go over this real quick, but that's the gist of this section, is that you need to be able to experience these beneficial aspects of it. You need to have a sense of openness. Such activities have been a part of shamanistic and religious rituals for large parts of human history, and were possibly part of the very first rituals. Ritual context might be crucial here. As we saw in the rave research, merely engaging in strenuous activities does not always lead to awe-inspiring experiences. So the ritual aspect is a very important aspect. Thus, engaging in certain activities such as dancing and taking psychedelics may contribute in particular to awe-inspiring experiences whereby a focus on the self is decreased, which in turn can lead to feelings of connectedness and social bonding, possibly especially in individuals scoring high on openness to experience and low on maladaptive narcissism. Right? So if you're a narcissist, you're not, right? Again, think about all people saying, oh, well, if we just gave that certain psychopath some DMT, he would be an entirely new person. Probably not. Probably not. Such activities have been part of shamanistic and religious rituals for a large part of human history. Anthropologists and sociologists have argued for years that specific ritual contexts are required to allow for the emotional stimulation necessary to transcend normal boundaries and states of mind. When such a state has been achieved, ritual participants feel that they are physically and symbolically outside of the normal social order, which is when new perspectives can occur. At the same time, however, the transcendental state that the ritual has induced produces a sense of collectivity. When these two processes together mean that participants come away from the ritual with a renewed sense of identity and purpose. And that's one thing that this world is really lacking, purpose. Now, so what's actually really going on here in terms of ontologically is that when you take psychedelics or engage in these ritualistic aspects in general, what you're doing is you're switching your perception, your perceptivity, your mode of experience from the linear perception associated with the space-time holos, the physical world, and you're switching over to an experience of the unconscious mind, and you're tapping into the frequency domain. Because remember, in Hyperionism, it's made up of two domains. The frequency domain and then the space-time domain. Frequency domain is the domain of mind and non-locality, and space-time is the domain of a more linear system and dealing in locality. So the frequency domain is a non-local reality. It is a collective reality. It is the source reality. It is where everything is interconnected. So space-time is a world of separation and distances. I exist in this particular location. You exist in that particular location. We are both localized entities and separate from one another. Now, the frequency domain is the opposite of that. The frequency domain is a non-local domain in which there are no physical distances. There is no physical separation whatsoever. And it is a domain of collectivity. For an analogy is the computer game analogy. The video game world is about locality. Your character is here, that character is there. You need to travel to different distances in the game. You need to travel to a certain location to achieve a certain quest. But the code is non-local. There is no distances in the code. So the code is the game. They're both the game, but one is non-local and one is local. One is completely interconnected. Whereas in the game world, things are disparate, apparently disparate, not truly disparate, but apparently disparate. So a very similar thing is going on in the frequency domain versus the space-time domain. And when we are analyzing the world, basically that's what we're doing. What are we? With our senses and perceptions and everything, we are constantly analyzing and evaluating. So when we are tuned into the physical world, we are analyzing the space-time functions of space and time. When we enter into a state of psychedelic state or another type of altered state that might occur during void states, etc., we are switching over to analyzing the frequency domain aspect of it. And this is how we are able to have these, this is why we experience interconnectivity. This is why we experience a sense of connectedness. There's nothing mystical or woo-woo about it. And the fact that you're doing rituals, there's nothing woo-woo about that. It's not like, oh, well, if we say these certain magic words, we'll access this. It's not because of the words themselves. It's because it puts you in the right mindset, the right state of mind to begin to access unconscious content. And ultimately the collective unconscious, which is the frequency domain. So you have the world of space-time, which is sort of everything broken up, and then you have the frequency domain, which is everything unified. Another way to look at this is really, really simplistic example. Look at the difference between 4, the number 4, and 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. They're both equal. 4 equals 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. But there are two different ways of looking at it. If you're looking at the 4, it's unified. There is 1 4 there. But if you look at the 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, you're looking at the 4 that has been broken up into separate things. The 4 divided. The 4 in separate instances. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. And then the 4 itself. This is a simplistic analogy for understanding the difference between the broken up world of space-time and the unified frequency domain and the source. And what the difference in processing the psychedelics allow you to do. So you can, and this is why it's really important to have both perspectives, because people who think that the world is only material and not connected, they're only looking at the 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 side. They're going, look, there are 4 separate things here. Obviously, the world's not connected. Well, they're not seeing the other side of the question, which is a single 4. So do you see the difference and the need to have both perspectives? And this is, in a simplistic way, how the frequency domain relates to the space-time domain. The frequency domain is that unified non-local domain. And then the space-time is that broken up, linear, divided, localized domain. They're not contradictions, just like 4 equals 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is not a contradiction. It's perfectly valid. Anyway, so this is basically what is happening on an ontological level with the use of certain states. You are switching from the space-time linear mode of perceptualizing reality and switching to the unconscious frequency mode of perceptualizing reality. Now they're perceiving reality. And I could go on a long time about that, but we have to persevere. So in this sense, then, raves and festivals may be relatively recent, but seemingly enduring subcultural versions of collective rituals, crucially involving music and dance in a way that can exalt the mind. And this is exactly what the Dionysian mysteries were about. Attending art performances such as drama, but perhaps also experiencing painting, sculpture, and so on, may be another ritual context, which is not necessarily religious, but which could induce awe and consequent personal transformation and social bonding, which warrants further research. Nonetheless, the research so far suggests that secular rituals are able to induce similar effects to religious rituals, using similar mechanisms as age-old religious rituals. This is great news, given a worldwide increase in non-religious individuals with secular worldviews and secular rituals who will be able to find self-transcendence outside of church. And while, you know, the main thing here is what they're sort of trying to say is, oh, well, church allows you to have these things, but since people are starting to step away from religion and having a secular worldview, well, then you can, what you got in church, you could get here as well. No, you are getting beyond, well beyond what you are getting from church. Church rips your deity away and divides the world. If we have ritual transcendent experiences done, guided by logic and reason, where we understand what is happening, and they're done in the right way, one becomes identified with deity, and one has an understanding of interconnectedness, which is above and beyond, and really the opposite of what mainstream religious rituals will do, where it rips your divinity away and creates division in the world. So in other words, fuck church, take acid. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't sue me, okay? Don't do anything dangerous or illegal. But you see what I'm getting at here. Psychedelics can be used in a very productive way for certain people in the right context, in the right setting, with the right mindset, done in a responsible way to achieve infinitely more powerful than anything that religious experience could do. So I hope you can see here how I'm not saying that psychedelics are the answer to everything. I think I've talked long enough about how that is not the case. I'm just so sick of people thinking that I'm saying that. Definitely not. Logic and reason is what allows us to build a new world. But within this sphere of experience, rather than submitting to some god, praying and engaging in all these sort of negative ritualistic experiences, we can have positive transcendent psychedelic ritual experiences in which we are experiencing the interconnectivity of us together, forming a sense of community, where we are then wanting to search for answers given the tremendous perceptions that are required from this experience, and able to work on self-transformation and growth in a way where we're actually understanding, or not understanding, but rather beginning to perceive elements of our own personal unconscious and psyche. So, as usual, to hell with mainstream religion. Let's build a new world. Let's build a better world. Let's build a world where we can have truly purposeful and meaningful experiences together as a group, where what do? As always, are realizing our own divinity. I want to give a big shout out to all the supporters on Patreon, especially Cassidy, Renaissance, and Jordy. Big shout out to Cassidy for joining the reality tier in Patreon. Thank you so much. Thank you to all you guys. And when you support on Patreon, you get access to our weekly secret live streams, our hidden Discord server, the Citadel, and my hidden lecture notes. And Patreon is the best way to support with all the deplatforming and censorship going on YouTube and Facebook. It means a lot to me. So thank you.